But so the discovery with Smeagol discovering the ring. Well, when we first discover Smeagol, it's the Hobbit, remember? Because Bilbo is in the cave and it's that whole like he's trapped on the rock and it's this riddle sequence. And basically it's if Bilbo doesn't, if they have this little game of riddles that they go back and forth. And if Bilbo wins, he gets to get out of the cave. If he loses, he was going to be eaten by Gollum. Do you remember that? So I'm like, he's like this zombie. Like when we first meet him, he is this flesh-eating, ugly creature. And so that's our first taste of Gollum. Then when we learned that Smeagol was actually once Hobbit-like, and it was on his birthday, which I'm like, I love, how interesting is that? That he got it on his birthday, like this day of new beginnings, but really it's like the, first step into death.
I am thrilled beyond belief to welcome Leah Holser to today's conversation, and we are concluding the epic mega series, Tolkien's Greatest Characters. Leah, how are you?
Great. This is really exciting. This has been such a good series. I have gotten to be a participant on the other side, and I have been so amazed by your guests, by just the level that Tolkien can affect people, the complexity of these characters, and how cool it is to see what comes out of people reading him. So very exciting for me to be part of the conclusion of this, and such an interesting character we're going to get to talk about. So I'm great and I'm happy.
Wonderful. Well, before we talk about your character, I would love for you, since you referenced J.R.R.'s effect on culture and his stories that have gone around the world and inspired millions. How did you come across Tolkien? When did you first discover him? And what was your experience like?
Well, it would have been December of whenever the Peter Jackson movies came out, because I was not in that vein whatsoever to be reading Tolkien. People in my world weren't. It was actually you, Derek Holser, my new at the time husband. I don't think we had been married for very long when those came out. And up until that point, I had been pretty avoidant of anything that involved witches and wizardry and all these wonderful things that I now love to engage my imagination and wonderings. I hadn't yet at that point. And so I was a little cautious about going to the movies with you because it had things I didn't know how I felt about. And then I saw the movie and just absolutely fell in love with The Lord of the Rings. Like, couldn't believe I missed it. So watched the movies and just really fell in love with the work of Tolkien at that point. So thank you, Peter Jackson
Wonderful.
and Derek
Well,
Holser.
I'll refresh your memory. So we had been married a year and a half. It was 2001, and it was on your birthday. I'm sorry, just after your birthday. The theatrical release, the world premiere was on your birthday in London on December 10th, 2001. And we celebrated its U.S. release on December 19th. So a December birthday and a holiday tradition was begun on little Bainbridge Island, where we now live. At the time, we were visiting your parents for Christmas, and we had no
Yeah,
children.
that's right. Yeah,
And we went down to the theater at the Pavilion, as it's called locally, and
still there.
your life was forever changed.
It really was. That is not an exaggeration for sure. And I'm so happy for the worlds that have been opened up to me. It's been slow going for me, but being married to you has been a wonderful thing for making my world bigger and seeing the way it really is artistry. I wouldn't have known that prior to entering this kind of literary fiction. It is true art to create in this capacity, and it's just I am so happy to be able to now engage in that world. I don't think like that. So I am not a creator. I created children and I'm proud of them. I would say my comfortable spot on planet Earth is looking at what other people create and encouraging them in that. I can tell once I see something or hear something, I know if I like it or don't like it. It's the when there's nothingness, grabbing something out of the nothingness. That was not handed down to me. So, the creators in the world that do that, I have such an appreciation for and amazement for. And I'm not putting myself down. I just know the way that I'm wired, and I definitely have deep appreciation for it.
Let me ask you a question, if it's okay. You mentioned that you were hesitant to watch the film because of your own perception of wizards and witches, and let's call it dark magic or the occult or spirituality beyond the realm of the church. Um, Talk to us just if you would, and if not, we'll move on. But I'm really curious about how you perceived it going into it, what you were hesitant about and tentative toward, and what did the movie do for you in terms of your willingness to entertain those types of characters?
You're right. No, that's a great question. And probably would take 3 hours for me to answer. I would just say I was just very, very cautious due to a literal nature. Sorry, I'm getting pop-ups here. Um, due to um probably at that time just being around more literally minded people, reading scripture, reading the Bible literally, being very worried of the occult, that who that the expression of be careful what doors you open, like the occult just sort of magically jumps into my soul. I honestly, there was just so much fear and protection and a not understanding of the imagination as this beautiful God-given gift, that this world that we get to enter into. And it is funny because I did read Chronicles of Narnia, but it's like, well, I know about the C.S. Lewis guy. We can trust what's behind it. It's always the what's behind it, because you never know what's going to jump into your soul and you know, like the fear. I'm saying that sarcastically. I have to be careful when I say things that it's not taken wrong. I'm saying that sarcastically, that I had this fear of the unknown, especially wizards, anything like that that could grieve the Holy Spirit. That was where I sat.
Thank you for sharing that. I know that that is something that's a tension point for Christian parents, different degrees, and certainly tends to be the case in the circles that you and I grew up in. And I'm so thankful that as a 31-year-old, you were willing to take a really big risk of going to see that movie because you might have become a witch by watching it. So thank you.
Just tells you how much I like movie popcorn. I was willing to risk all of my soul just to have that popcorn.
All right, enough of our jokes. Let's tell us the character that you've chosen, because nobody in this entire series of incredible guests was willing to take this character on. Maybe they were, but no one ever asked to until you did. And I want to know the name of your character and why you wanted to discuss this character.
Well, first of all, we have to present it in the way that I think, given everything you just said, this character chose me. Just going to say it that way. But I was shocked when I heard nobody had chosen the Smeagol Gollum character. I was like, what? Like, it's gotta be Tolkien's most complex. Like, I could not believe that one hadn't been chosen. And now I am so thrilled and honored that I get to talk with you about Smeagol and Gollum. And I've been like playing with this in my mind because your guests have been so amazing. Like, I have been blown away at the level of insight and study and love that they have for Tolkien. And so I see your guests as purists, Derek, and I see myself as, I don't even know if I can say one who's shown up to play, because I don't even know that I have the skills necessarily to play, but it's like somebody who's going to sing the national anthem that does not have any kind of vocal talent, but they give it their go and they are belting it out and they feel it and they're going to switch keys and octaves. That's going to be me today talking about Smeagol and Gollum. So I have passion, but not the same insight as the guests up to you. So that's why I would say I believe I was chosen. I didn't come on and say I must talk about them. I just want them to be represented.
Perfect. Well, I do know you that you do have plenty of talent to go along with your passion. So I'm excited for your rendition as you step to the mic, and I'll get out of the way and ask the first question. What is your interpretation of the way in which Smeagol discovers the ring and the subsequent violence that ensues? And then
Mm-hmm.
if you have any thoughts about that, but also any thoughts or knowledge that you have pertaining to Smeagol's backstory before he came to wrestle over the ring and ultimately kill for it.
Um, yeah, I know it's interesting that you bring up the word violence with the discovery because it happened pretty quickly of from when he discovers the ring that it sounds like what was it described? Like he goes back in the village and they would kick him. Like he wasn't just the violent one. He was annoying them because he would be invisible and then get their secrets. But the phrase was something like they would kick him and he would bite their foot. I don't know. I'm pretty certain that's in the fellowship in the beginning of it, but it's kind of funny when you think about violence. But so the discovery with Smeagol discovering the ring. Well, when we first discover Smeagol, it's the Hobbit, remember? Because Bilbo is in the cave and it's that whole like he's trapped on the rock and it's this riddle sequence. And basically, it's if Bilbo doesn't if they have this little game of riddles that they go back and forth. And if Bilbo wins, he gets to get out of the cave. If he loses, he was going to be eaten by Gollum. Do you remember that? So I'm like, he's like this zombie. Like when we first meet him, he is this flesh-eating, ugly creature. And so that's our first taste of Gollum. Then when we learned that Smeagol was actually once Hobbit-like, and it was on his birthday, which I'm like, I love, how interesting is that? That he got it on his birthday, like this day of new beginnings, but really it's like the, first step into death. But anyway, so it's on his birthday and he's out fishing on a pond with his cousin and they're like Hobbit, like, I don't even remember if it says what they are, but we know they're like Hobbit-like creatures. He and his cousin finds it in the bottom of the pond and Smeagol is attracted to it right away by the gold and he wants it. So first he asks for it, like, give it to me for my birthday present. And his cousin's like, I already paid for a birthday present for you, though. It's just really funny that he said that. And but because the cousin doesn't, is it a cousin or a friend? Anyway, because it's not given to
It's
him.
a cousin, and they are hobbits. They're Stoor, Stoor hobbits.
Thank you, Derek. And
Uh-huh.
so he he actually kills his cousin friend. And so the violence does happen right away. Another thing that we know about Gollum that was really interesting to me was he was really interested in secrets, to the root of things, the root of the way things began. And I think one of the reasons or I was so drawn to Gollum and Smeagol is because I do feel such a connection to myself very strongly. Like this two pull, like I understand myself better when I look at this, and like the tale of don't be this way, Leah. But I would say my attraction to the deep things, the unknown things, like the root of things that the rest of the world doesn't know. Like I have to be so careful with conspiracy theories because I love them so much. Like I want to know something that the rest of the world doesn't know. And it like activates this part of my brain that's like up there with eating a chocolate chip cookie, the instant reaction of knowing something that the rest of the world doesn't know. And it's so strong in me. It's weird to me that other people don't feel that way. But from talking to people, I realize other people don't always feel that way. But Gollum and I do feel that way. And we want to know, what is this deep secret in the world that the rest of the world doesn't know? So that was an interesting thing that And so when Smeagol first got the ring, he was able to go around and hear town secrets, right? Because he puts it on and he's invisible. So he's stirring up all this malice. Um, because and it's interesting how Tolkien says it. It's not, he's not looking for the truth in everything, right? He's looking for the secrets. And I just thought that that's such a good distinction between like the Eye of Sauron and the Almighty, right? Is like there's this one that is always looking for truth, but then there's this whatever in the world that's always looking for the secret. So I don't know.
I
Does
see. Yep.
that did I answer the whole question on that one? Was there more?
Oh, I think you did. We identified his origins. And by the way, his group of hobbits did not settle in the Shire. They were in a different region.
That's right.
Um,
Thank
and
you.
no, thank you. You mentioned something as an aside, but I'd like to bring you back to it. You said that it was interesting that it happened on his birthday, and it's also the day, I think you said, when he started to die. So I want you to unpack that example as you hinted at it, but what did you mean by that?
I guess Uh, so like I alluded to him in the zombie-like state because I think when we meet Gollum at that point, he's already been not dead. I'm sorry. He's already been unnaturally alive for hundreds and hundreds of years, held by this ring because he possesses the ring. It's kept him unnaturally alive. Now he's no longer Smeagol anymore, right? Like we've lost what he was created to be, and he is just day by day Melfed. Melfed. I make up words. Tolkien makes up words and people they say he's brilliant. I make up words and my family makes fun of me. What's the
You
word?
know,
Morphed?
my
Morphed. I'm looking for morphed.
well, I was gonna say that my favorite writer, Cormac McCarthy, makes up words all the time, so you're in great company.
Yeah, but somehow I think I have to master the human language first and then you can play with words. I just kind of blend. Morphed, I believe is the word I was looking for, into this Gollum figure, which I kind of see him in my head as this zombie. Like he really should be dead. Like death is actually a gift that the ring had stolen from him and turned him into this thing that he's one of the things you and I were talking about that I don't even know if we'll go into on this, but is like, is Smeagol still there? Or is it just all Gollum? Has Smeagol died or and become Gollum? Or do we still have Smeagol in there at the point at the end, right? When he goes
Right.
into the fire. Is that Smeagol being consumed? I think it has to be because that's the way it started. But anyway, I do think of it as like this zombie-like state of this one who should be dead, who's still alive, eating flesh. And so that's why I say that the day his death began, because although he's alive, he's not, he's, it's a dead living. Again, which is why when I see this in myself, I'm like, cautionary tale, don't go there. Tolkien nailed this. And that's why I love the complexity of the Smeagol Golem, because it's not just like, do the right thing, good. Do the wrong thing, bad. The complexity that's inside of all of us of this desiring, for the secrets, for all these things that Gollum is and has. And, it's not lost on me that Frodo needed Gollum to navigate Mordor. Like this space, there was things that Gollum and when Frodo puts on the ring, he can become invisible. It helps him get away from the very, very beginning. Bilbo uses it to get away from evil things. Like it served their purpose. So it's this really, really slippery slope into good, bad, that all is related to the ring. So it's the complexity there that I love so much of living, of death, of good, of evil, of wanting, of just being satisfied, and of knowing. So there's a lot there. So when I think birthday, he found this on his birthday, and it's a time of new beginnings because birthday is a day closer. Like every time we have a birthday, like you're celebrating it, but it's like also a day closer to like my final date on my tombstone. So, but it's also celebrating when we started. So I just found it fascinating that he found it on his birthday.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I think that we'll find out at the end your take with respect to Smeag, if there's any Smeagol left in Gollum. And to your point that you raised, which again, just a little teaser for those of you who have made it this far in the conversation, that the final question will address the idea of whether or not there's any Schmeagol that survives the Golem. But it really depends on where you land in the sort of ongoing conversation between two. You mentioned Mr. Lewis, C.S. Lewis, and my own favorite, and Lewis's master, as he called him, George MacDonald, which they end up at different places, as you know from The Great Divorce, that Mr. Lewis thought that a person could no longer be human if they continued to abide in a certain way. And the character that stands out to me from that story is the grumble, where the woman grumbles and complains so much that she's no longer a woman, she's just a grumble. But of course, his representation of George MacDonald, those of you who are interested can go back to our Great Divorce series for the way we discussed that and whether or not Mr. Lewis was actually accurate and honest in his telling of MacDonald's position. Nonetheless, we will continue with Smeagol, and I have the next question. As he possesses the ring and it possesses him, you've touched on this vicious cycle. We resist, then succumb, over and over again. And the question I want to ask is not to rehash that, as you've already talked about so eloquently. I would like to ask your thought on whether or not Schmeagol had ever any hope of actually overcoming the ring, given how powerful it was. And likewise, how do people have hope of overcoming powerful temptations?
Right. Great questions. And that's the complexity that Tolkien is. And I don't honestly dare to give an answer. I would just like to step into that space. I think um, part of it, we have to look at, I can never come into any conversation with no hope. So just that's there. I have to keep hope alive. There's always the hope. However, in this situation, um, you know, well, especially by the time we're meeting Gollum, Gollum is so bound to the ring. His very identity. When I thought it was interesting that he actually is referring to himself as the precious, but he's also referring to the ring as the precious, and that's because his identity is so bound to the ring, right? So at the point that we're meeting Gollum in this story, he's already so intertwined that it's hard to know now. Can he make a decision that's not involved? And we see this in when Gandalf is first telling Frodo about Bilbo and meeting with Gollum, and Frodo, remember Frodo is, I hope I'm getting this right. Frodo's like, pity that Bilbo didn't take him out. Like, it's a shame that he's still alive. Now we have to deal with him. And Gandalf is like, really corrects Frodo on that. Like, be careful. You don't understand this. It was pity that kept the ring, that kept it was Bilbo's pity for Gollum that kept him alive. And Gandalf was saying this like a good thing. And so I just think you have to bring that whole pity part into this conversation. And that's where I feel like we really feel the weight of Tolkien not being so quick to answer. And it was this great quote. And I don't have the quote. The book is Pity, Power, and Tolkien's Ring by Hillman. And he is at the beginning of that, he was talking about an essay that Tolkien did on Beowulf, talking about how it's almost better when the writer feels rather than explicitly says. Now, of course, that's kind of like a no-brainer, whatever. Read Tolkien's actual quote on it in the essay about Beowulf. It's really, really good. But I'm just saying, I feel when I'm reading this, Tolkien isn't explicit with the question you asked me, but he's feeling the weight of evil. Like, what do we do under the weight of evil? Do we actually have free will? Like, I feel like Gollum forces us to look at this question of how much free will. And as a Christian growing up my whole life, where and I would say American Christian, where free will is a very, very, very important part of the uh, the doctrine that I was given, without stopping to look at what are the circumstances that shaped my will. You know, we all grow up in these very, very different circumstances where you cannot just compare person A to person B, that each one of us is so complex, the way that we're wired, what we've been through. Um, so sorry, I don't know if I'm going deeper, but that's what Tolkien does. And you're being sweet, going, yes, Leah, reel it back in. But I just think that it's this complexity of pity. Like, what is the weight of evil? I don't know that I'm the one that can answer that question, but I want your listeners to think about it for themselves. What do we expect when we see people presented with evil, choosing good, choosing evil? What do we expect of them? And do we stop to think the weight of what they're carrying, like Gandalf did to Frodo?
Excellent. I found your quote. Uh, and
Okay.
well, at least a quote that is like it. It is from Tolkien's fabulous essay on fairy stories, which I've read a number of times. I encourage people to read it, even if you're not aspiring to be a writer. It really is a beautiful collection of essays, which were taken from a talk that he gave. But he says the significance of a myth is not easily to be pinned on paper by analytical reasoning. It is at its best when it is presented by a poet who feels rather than makes explicit what his theme portends, who presents it incarnate in the world of history and geography as our poet has done. And I think one of the points there, I mean, there's 2 points that I would highlight. The first being that obviously it's a feeling rather than an explicit portending of the theme. And that
Hmm.
is a way in which language bypasses the ear and the mind and goes to the heart and the soul. The other, and music and songs are so powerful in this regard, but the other is that he uses the word incarnate in the world of history and geography. And I think that's a really important word to not lose sight of when it comes to these characters, that they're reflections of the creator incarnate in the world in which they
Hmm.
inhabit. And so they, of course, Gandalf has his own nature and character and his wisdom that guides, and you have various levels of that wisdom operating in each of the characters. And Smeagol does not appear to have a ton of wisdom. And now Mr. Bilbo we're going to hop back to where Mr. Bilbo has absconded with the ring from Gollum. And of course, we know that he deceives Gollum in taking the ring by tucking it away and coming up with the riddle and all the rest that he does, knowing that it doesn't belong to him either. And yet Bilbo takes it. It doesn't overtake him in the same way that it seems to have overtaken Smeagol. And I wonder if you have any thoughts about the fact that Bilbo had clearly long-standing relations in his community and a reputation associated with that might have had a level of accountability in his life that Smeagol did not. And Smeagol, of course, was alone in the darkness when we first discover him, and who knows how long he'd been in that state. So I'm curious how you interpret Bilbo's ability to navigate ownership of the ring without it completely turning him into a Gollum.
Right. I think that community part that you brought in is really, really great. Because when you think about it, when Frodo is given the ring, he's got Gandalf with him. You know, I mean, he's got some serious support and wisdom, community, um, that it doesn't sound like Schmeagol had. He had people kicking him, you know. So, so I think that community aspect is a really important one. The other one is I just think the relationship to the ring is a really, really important thing, because the ring is not an inanimate object. There's not just the complexity of the Smeagol Golem, but you have the complexity of this ring and its connection to Sauron. And so with the ring, it's interesting because at the point that Bilbo found it, the ring has actually rejected Smeagol. The ring was kind of done with Smeagol because Smeagol wasn't leaving the cave. Smeagol's down in the cave because he no longer wants the sunlight. but he's afraid of everything. So he's been driven into these mountains, deep into these caves. Well, the ring knows it can't fulfill its destiny stuck here in the bottom. So it's actually interesting that it rejects Smeagol, not expecting to go into the hands of Bilbo. But the complexity there, and with Sauron, right? So the ring is trying to return to Sauron, which the really fascinating part, how who has the ring can be seen by Sauron. And so it's like in your invisibleness to the world is actually being more seen by evil. So that dynamic is crazy, right? Like I feel like we could play around for an hour just in that dynamic of what happens when they put on the ring and disappear. It's like, okay, and how interesting that now they become more visible to the call of evil. But then when you add the fact that Tom Bombadil wouldn't become invisible when he put it on, like he, so that's another level of, well, does that talk about the person then holding the ring and the power and the significance they're giving to it? So there, let's go back to the beginning of the conversation. If Smeagol is more hungry for community, if he's more, like maybe he wants secrets because that connects him to people. I don't know. So if maybe he's more hungry for what the ring is promising him, he's a lot more vulnerable to its weight and to its control over him. Whereas if Tom Bombadil, who has no need of that, he's just singing his songs, reading his poems, doing all that, it doesn't even affect him at all. We've got Frodo somewhere in between. So I'm so sorry, I've already forgotten your question. But as far as the dynamic of the influence, like what helped Frodo not succumb to the ring like Smeagol did, I think your community thing is really right on, because I think that feeds the state of our soul and what we're ready for, what we'll open ourselves up to, subject ourselves to. So from that point, I think community, having people speak into us, protect our souls kind of in a way from compromising into places where we go for answers that aren't actually going to help us get closer to truth.
Thank you. And you answered the question with aplomb. I think that you at the tail end there, you mentioned Frodo's relationship to the ring, which we were talking about Bilbo's, but that's perfect because I want to talk about Frodo's relationship and Gandalf's with Gollum. And I would love for your take in terms of what that relationship represents, how that relationship is portrayed between Frodo and Gollum, and what we can take away from that in our own lives and relationships on this earth.
Right. I was really hoping that I would just in the moment have a great answer to that question. And I don't. It's really hard. I do appreciate how Frodo's relationship with changed once he understood the weight of what he was carrying. Like he now has something in common with Gollum. And at the very, very beginning, when he's first holding the ring, it's a lot easier to just hate Gollum, wish he had never existed, wish he had been killed. And it's amazing how then when he was in a position for him to be killed, it's actually Frodo who stands up to protect Gollum. And that dynamic too, right, with Sam, because I think you'll ask me later about Sam, but
Go
Sam has
ahead.
this
Just throw it all
strong.
together.
That's what I do, baby. Sam has this strong disdain for Gollum, which you can completely appreciate, right? Um, but see, Frodo understands differently than Sam does. His relationship is entirely different because he understands the weight of it and the fact that he almost needs Gollum, who's navigated what Frodo is needing to navigate, both holding the ring and then also through Mordor, knowing the way. So it's kind of an interesting thing how that, and I like more simple things. You know this about me. So I don't like that Frodo has that deep connection with Gollum. I want him to just reject Gollum and be like, no, I'm not going to become that. I'm not going to go that direction. But that's what makes Tolkien so incredibly profound, is that reality of their connection. And I think the human condition that we do need to navigate, like there's evil happening around us, through us, to us, in us, like it's really, really there. And just killing the evil doesn't work somehow. And so it's Tolkien being like, I don't know what does work. Tolkien is of strong faith, strong hope, strong conviction of the Almighty. And so you do have this sense of hope in it. It's not a hopelessness in this relationship, but it's this reality. And so I find that distinction of Frodo and Sam's relationship, and then Frodo and Gollum's relationship, and then Sam and Gollum's relationship, is probably what all of us deal with every day, just in our own heart. Like, I would say about myself, I would love to be Sam. I don't want to be Frodo. Don't give me the main task. I don't want to do it, but I want to be the person that supports the one who's got to do the main work. Um, and so that dynamic, I can feel that frustration for Sam, just wanting that thing to be gone. That's so hard for the person that has the job to do. He just wants that evil to be gone. Um, but that reality, you can't just kill that evil. You can't just say bad words to that evil. You can't just throw rocks at that evil. Um, and and so I find all of that dynamic just fascinating, and that Gollum does need to exist. He does need to lead them through Mordor.
Let's talk about Gollum's journey along the way. He comes and he goes. He's trailing behind. He's at times stalking, at times luring them into a trap. He does a lot of different things and plays many parts in Frodo and Sam's quest once the Fellowship has parted ways and Frodo and Sam are trying to make their way past into the depths of Mordor. And I'm just very curious to know your thoughts about Gollum's um, role at different stages in the part of the quest in which Frodo and Sam are on their own. And we have interaction with Shelob. We have Gollum sort of ensnaring and trapping and luring them. We have him trying to take it. We have him disappearing for a while. We have him serving as an honest guide from time to time. So a host of things happen and perhaps even reveal that there might be a little Smeagol left in him. Just your thoughts on that component of Gollum's role in the journey.
I mean, it's talk about complexity. How cool that he writes that whole Schmeagol Gollum connection, those places where we do get to see Smeagol come out, right? Like, it's so easy to pity him because he becomes childlike, and we can see he actually gets excited to help them on their quest. And you just think about a child who's been given a responsibility, right? And how they like get excited and rise to it. And at moments you can almost see that Gollum wants to be a part of this quest, even though he doesn't want the ring destroyed. Um, and so it's pretty. I don't know. I was hoping I'd have profound thoughts once I was put in the chair. I really don't, but if we could just discuss it, like, I'm so glad you can edit. So, okay, so I'm just thinking how I just keep seeing Ken Jeong from Community doing his Gollum impersonation, and how much this has affected all of culture, right? Our whole subculture of that person in us who wants to do what's right and be true and be actual, and then you have what you've grown accustomed to doing, and what protects you. And that whole, how you're saying he straggles behind, he's in front, and he's complaining all the time. But of course, because he's like their prisoner, and Sam's throwing things at him and calling him mean things. Like, there's so many dynamics going on there that again, the whole conversation of free will, like when you look at Gollum's life and what he's becoming and what he has become, it's really awful. And this quest that they're on is making it more and more evident. Like part of this journey is us as as the reader getting to find out about this complex creature that we wanted to just hate, and now we can't just hate them. We actually pity them.
Let us conclude this incredible conversation. Thank you for doing it. And I really think that you've provided a lot of good insight. So, despite your humility and your desire to be perhaps more academic, that's not what this is about. And I think that it's important to reflect on the reason that we got started with this channel in the first place. As you know, I've said from the beginning that the desire would be that this not be a completely academic pursuit, but that we would have a blend of voices, people who all have credibility and dignity and value to add to these ongoing conversations, so that we don't get lost, as tends to be the case, quite frankly, with some of our more academic oriented people in minutia. And so I am grateful for your perspective. I am grateful for your time. And I think you have much to offer the listeners. So that is why you have joined me here. And now I would like for you to offer something in a concluding thought. And it is perhaps the most provocative point of all, which I teased earlier in our conversation. This distinction between what happens to Smeagol as Gollum becomes more and more the voice and the body and the shape and the form holding on to this ring. And that is this debate that happened in the story of the Great Divorce and between Professor MacDonald and Mr. Lewis. And that is, as the end of the book happens and the pivotal scene in the movie unfolds, we know that Gollum bites the ring off of Frodo's finger and into the fire they both tumble. And I would like to know your thoughts on the fires of Mordor, the destruction of the ring in Gollum, and the potential for it to be the consuming fire that purifies and releases Smeagol to his final participation in the good of the universe. In other words, at the bottom of that pit, just as Gandalf himself fought the Balrog and plunged to the depths and came out as Gandalf the White, do you have any thoughts on the idea that perhaps at the bottom of those depths, Smeagol the Pure came out of the fire, leaving Gollum and the ring burnt and gone, nevermore to appear?
Well, you know I do, because we've talked about this. So here it's doing it concisely and stating first and foremost, I love metaphor and analogy, and I can get stuck in them for too long. And I want to realize with Tolkien, though, the complexity of these characters, my metaphor and analogy might put that more in a box that wouldn't actually be serving up Tolkien properly. So I have to be careful with myself and my own mind when I'm going down these analogies. But when you hear fire, of course, I think, the consuming fire. I love George MacDonald. And so George MacDonald has really shaped how I see fire, and the burning of that which cannot be corrupted just purifies. And so I don't fear fire talk like I once did. But when I hear fire talk, George MacDonald comes into mind. And so this demise that you talk about, where they both, they don't both, it's just Frodo's finger and Gollum end up in this fire where they are consumed. And that, I think Tolkien saying that might have been Frodo's fate, like the fact that his finger goes in there, or is that the alluding to, like, if your eye causes you to sin, pluck it off? Like, I don't know. I don't want to be trapped in analogy and metaphor, but I will say that what it did bring to mind was the opposite, which is when George MacDonald talks about the white stone given in Revelation, and how and George MacDonald, his take on the white stone with our name given by God. And this is in his unspoken sermons. And so it's unspoken sermon 1, and the sermon is titled The White Stone. But it's this
Can I
whole
can I
idea.
just real quick, what
Yeah.
is it you're referring to for those who are unfamiliar with this stone and revelation and all that? Just
So,
quickly.
and I don't have, isn't that terrible? I was reading the sermon, but is it Revelation 2, Revelation 5? You can look where that's coming from for me. You're my
Okay,
fact checker.
I'm checking it out
Um,
right now.
but
Revelation
where to go?
2:17.
Okay. Do you want to go ahead and read that for us?
Sure.
Okay.
Revelation 2:17. I'm reading from the let's pick a edition here. Let's go with the ESV, you know.
Love it.
He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. To the one who conquers, I will give some of the hidden manna, and I will give him a white stone with a new name written on the stone that no one knows the name except the one who receives it. So that's the reference from the scripture. And now, Leah, please continue.
So George MacDonald has written an unspoken sermon titled The White Stone based on that passage, where he speculates and wonders about that white stone that is given to the one who overcomes, and what is that new name given. And it's a very beautiful passage that just talks about, so when we're at the point of overcoming, and we know now who we truly are meant to be. Like, we know what I was created to be, but it's not until like this journey of life that we've been on, and we've been tried, we've been tested, we've been beaten down. Like, picture these guys going through Mordor and all of that, like coming up to the fire, and what a beautiful reception, right? Uh, of seeing, knowing that what you've been through has been recognized. Your overcoming is being recognized, and it's being identified with who you are. And now, because you've been through all this, you actually have this wisdom about who you were created to be. And God's up there waiting to like celebrate with you. And now you're at the point where you can receive this purity. So this white stone is like this pure foundation, this purity of who I am. And it's a name that now I can fully understand. And it's the name that God's given to me because he knows me and he sees me, and he knows that which is true. So I would say that the center of it is that which is most true about me. It's being seen, and it's this moment where I know it and God knows it, and we have this moment together. And it's so the complete opposite of the eye of Sauron, right? That's always looking to use and to bring this power towards. And it has nothing to do with identity. And in fact, it actually chews up your identity. And so it's such a sadness to me that Gollum ends up in this burning fire where he's actually completely consumed. So I don't actually theologically believe that I can be completely consumed, because I don't believe, or anybody, when I say me, I'm just talking about humankind, humanity, because I believe we are created with truth. There is identity, there is purpose. And even if we've believed a lie that's made us blind, the whole sight thing, who can see, who can't see, all that Tolkien's playing with is like mind-blowing in this identity conversation. But when you come to this truth of who I am and being so known by God, and then you contrast that with the eye of Sauron that pretends like they see, but really it's secrets. It's not truth. And it's not based on that which is real. And so that is what is consumed. So you and I have had these conversations, because I'm like, well, was Smeagol actually consumed? But see, the whole thing is unnatural, because Smeagol was unnaturally still alive. And so in the natural order things, Smeagol would have died. And so we couldn't have that conversation. So, I mean, is this maybe a purgatory conversation? No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going there. But so I'm careful to not mirror this ending of this story with my theology for that very purpose, because we're not kept unnaturally alive by this ring. And I very
Uh-huh.
much believe that when we fall into the fire, that which is not of love's kind will be consumed. But I believe we all carry within us that is of love's kind, and that's what's written on the stone. So I believe we will all be handed a white stone with our name when we overcome, whenever that might be. So there you go, Derek Philip Holser.
Thank you, Leah Grace Holser, for entertaining my speculation, as always. Uh, this has been great. You have given us much to think about, and I thank you for taking on a very complex character who can be somewhat readily dismissed by people in the mainstream, but I think actually presents one of the best portrayals of what it means to try to live this life well and to fall short, and to have friends like Frodo and Gandalf to help us try to make things right in the end.
Love it. Thank you.
Do you?
I do love it.
So
I
that's
am blown
you're all
away by it.
done, you know? So we
Yeah,
finished. Should
we
I
we finished.
should I stop the recording, you think?
Guessing people don't want to watch anymore.
You'd be
So
surprised.
I
There's a lot of content out there that I don't understand why people watch it, and yet they do.
so I don't know what to
Thank
say.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
And when he said Gollum, he made a horrible swallowing noise in his throat. That is how he got his name, though he always called himself my precious.